Let us see phasor diagram of transformer at lagging power factor. We have seen phasor at unity power factor. So for lagging power factor, the load will be inductive. If this is secondary side, so on secondary side the voltage will be V2 and current in load. This is what load. This is load. So in this load, current is I2, voltage across load is V2, and phasor relation between voltage and current in load will be this one, that is current will lag voltage by some angle phi. So for phasor we have phi here, and we know that this is locus of E1 E2. E1 E2 will lag phi by 90 degree, keeping in mind that we are following old convention. Say this is E1, so here it will be minus E1. Now voltage V2, as we know, E2 is V2 plus I2R2 plus J I2X2, secondary side voltage equation, and primary side voltage equation V1 equal to minus E1 plus I1R1 plus J I1 X1. We know it. So for E2 V2 I have to show, and V2 is lagging E2 by angle less than 90 degrees. So E2 is will be here, that will be shown later on. V2 will be say it is V2, and current will lag V2 by some angle phi. So current I will show here I2, which is lagging this by angle phi. If I2 is shown, so I2 dash, that is reflected current, will be shown in antiphase. So this is I2 dash. I0 we know it, which is I0, and I0 plus I2 dash is I1. So let me complete this parallelogram. So this current is I1. Okay, we know I1. I1 is I0 dash plus I2, I0 bar plus I2 dash. Now V2 is located. Now go for I2R2. I2R2 will be in phase with V2. So if it is locus of I2, so from V2 I2R2 will be shown, that will be in phase with I2. So I2R2 is here. This is what I2R2, and I2X2 will be leading V2 or leading I2R2 by 90 degree. So this is what I2X2 J I2X2, and this will be E2. So we got E2 as V2 plus I2R2 plus J I2X2 equal to E2. Coming to E minus E1, we know V1 is minus E1, so minus E1 is shown here. Now I1 R1, it will be in phase with I1. So here I1 is this locus, so I1 R1 will be drawn from tip of E1 like this. This is I1 R1. So I1 R1 is in parallel with I1, that is in phase. Parallel means I1 R1 is in phase with I1. Now from here I1 X1 will lead I1 R1. So I1 X1 will be drawn here. J I1 X1. So minus E1 plus I1 R1 plus J I1 X1 is nothing but V1. So minus E1 plus I1 R1 plus J I1 X1 is V1. So this will be V1. Okay. This angle between V1 and I1 will be phi1, and power factor angle is phi 2, which is angle between V2 and I2, right? We know I1 R1 plus JX1 X1 is nothing but I1 Z1 also. So I can show here, this is what I1 Z1. Similarly I2 R2 plus J I2 X2 is nothing but what I2 Z2, right? So that's all the phasor of lagging power factor, right? Let us go for phasor at at leading power factor. So for leading power factor, we know if it is load, voltage across load will be V2, current in this will be I2, and current I2 will now lead V2 by some angle phi 2. So let us draw, and we are drawing phasor for leading power factor. Leading power factor. So we have phi here. This will be locus of E1 and E2. So say this is E1 and here it will be locus of E2, and this will be minus E1. You know it. There is V2. In I2 I told you that I2 is leading V2. So I2 is shown here. I2 is leading V2 by angle phi 2. So if I2 is shown like this, I2 dash will also be available, that is reflected current. So this is what I2 dash. I0, we know I0 and I2 dash will be I1. So let me complete this parallelogram. So this current, which is I0 dash plus I2 dash, is I1. Now V2, we know E2 dash is V2 plus I2 R2 plus J I2 X2. So V2 is available now. I2 R2 will be in phase with I2. So V2 is here and I2 R2 will be in phase with I2. So parallel to this I will draw I2 R2, that will be like this. So this is what I2 R2, and I2 X2 will lead it by 90 degrees. So I2 X2 is here. This is what J I2 X2, and this is what E2. E2 is V2 plus I2R2 plus Ji2X2. So secondary side phasor is completed. Now primary side, that is V1, we know V1 is minus E1 plus I1R1 plus I1JX1. So E1 is available. I1R1 must be in phase with I1. So I1 is here. In phase with this, I1R1 will be drawn from tip of this, and that will be parallel to this line. So this is what drawn. This is I1R1 and this I1R1, and this is parallel with I1. That means I1R1 is in phase with I1, and I1X1 will be leading it by 90 degree. So J I1X1, and we know minus E1 plus I1R1 plus J I1X1 is nothing but V1. So V1 is obtained. So this is what the phasor for leading power factor.